Today we're going to mobilise your quads, and for this you just need a foam roller. So starting out then, you're just going to place the foam roller on the floor. What you want to do first of all is get yourself in a kind of a plank position with your arms. You can have one knee up here, and then you can just rest the quad onto here. So obviously you can have your arms straight or be onto the floor, depending on what you find more comfortable. And what we're going to do is just go for about 1.5 minutes first of all, of just doing what's called a contract and relax. We're just going to be breathing in, choose any area on the quad, and you're going to give your quad a good squeeze into the foam roller. Hold that for around 2 to 3 seconds and then slowly relax off. Now if the area feels a bit too sensitive, move slightly to somewhere that feels a bit better. Squeeze again, hold, and then relax off. You can stay in the same area for 2 to 3 times. But what you might find is that if an area is too sensitive, working on an area sort of above or below it or next to it is a good way to sort of just loosen off the area. Feed some slack into the area that was a little bit too sensitive, and then you can work back towards it, and then it should feel a bit better. Contract, hold it in, and then relax. Again, you can come out to a bit of a side plank there if you want to hit sort of the side angle of your leg a little bit more. Squeeze there. And relax, and you can come up. And obviously if you want to spend more time on this or have another visit later in the week, it can be quite hard to just hit your whole quad within 90 seconds. So just concentrate on some of the areas that feel, a little bit tighter. But you can still deal with, that sensitivity. What we don't want is that something being so sensitive that it ends up just taking your breath away, sort of. So imagine if I was to lean onto that now and you was like, it was just far too much for your body to handle placing on there. You're not going to get that relaxing effect that we want, okay? So next what we're going to do then is going to go for what's called a pressure wave, yeah? So we've just worked on that quad a little bit, and now what we want to do is spend about 30 seconds. So we're going to come up here into this sort of side plank position, and then you're coming over onto the other hand, and you're rolling sideways across the quad. And you want to keep that quite slow. Don't just be going in here fast. Just take it nice and slow along to there. Move down to a slightly different part of the quad. Up to there. Back across. And again, 30 seconds is probably not long enough. We'll go for 1 minute on here. And you want to at least give the length of a quad a run over at least once, really. A couple of times on some other areas. Up to here. Feels fine. I'd probably go repeat again a little bit lower down, just because it feels a little bit stiffer there today for me. Into this. So just do another 10 seconds. As you can see, this is quite slow. So this is just your pressure wave part of the movement. Into this. You're basically just going from a side plank to a plank with your quad pressing into a roller. Lastly, then we're going to finish off on this side. We're just going to go for 30 seconds of flossing. Okay, so you just want to again get down into that plank position, put a good bit of weight into there, find an area that you feel okay with, and then you're just going to bring your heel to bar, okay? So just come down to there, straighten it back out. You can point your toes if you need to. Into there, move to a slightly new area. Like for here now, this is quite sensitive still, so it might be that if an area is too sensitive to press into, you might just need to go back to some contract and relax for a moment. Loosen it off, reduce some of that sensitivity, and then you'll probably find that it'll be a lot better for you to just run over the area again, okay? So we're going to go again, 2 minutes on the contract and relax, 1 minute power pressure wave, and then 30 seconds flossing at the end. Okay, so we're just going to start here again, breathing in, contract, slowly relax off. Move to a slightly new area. Again, it can be very slight sometimes, like ½ an inch even, which then you kind of get a little bit of a crossover. You still work in the area you was a little bit, but then sometimes you just start working into a new bit. Again, just move up slightly again. Contract. And you might find that you're quite dominant on one side, and one side does feel a little bit more matted up. It's quite often if you look at your quads, one can be bigger than the other. Generally, that one can be working more when you're doing other exercises. You might have a bit of an imbalance there, and therefore it might be a bit stiffer. So breathe in again, contract. So it's not too sensitive for me up here. So sometimes you can just lower that out and just take your weight off the the floor, if you see what I mean. So you just put more weight through your leg. And relax there, good. Get up nice and high now, bring the toe back down because it's a little bit too sensitive. And again, like I said, you don't want it to take your breath away. You want somewhere between actually being able to feel it and it not being too sensitive. Now, obviously, if you're pressing into an area and it's not, you know, like that, it's not too bad, that's great. Like, you don't want all your muscles to be hurting anyway, you're not supposed to. You're not supposed to just press into a muscle and it hurts. You're supposed to just, I don't know if you've like someone standing on your quad, for example, should feel normal, but it shouldn't feel like, oh my God, it's just like someone just poking the heel a little bit into my leg, or someone, you know, just pressing into a roller. Shouldn't feel too sensitive. But it does, and that's obviously part of the reason why we're doing it. It's just trying to reduce some of that tension, reduce the sensitivity, which then allows us to move in and out of different positions, use other, you know, the pressure wave. But this kind of sets the stage for that. You can't be going in, rolling side to side on something if it really hurts, you know. So what we're going to do now then, like I said, pressure wave, 1 minute. Into there now. So you start off, like I said, in that side plank, and you just coming over to there, okay? Just move that slightly. Into there, back down. So it's always good. I find it easy just to have one leg out here, and then you can just rotate. Your knee kind of comes to the floor, and it comes back up. This one here, you're just going from like the side of your foot over to the tip of your toes. Into there, okay? So we've just got about another 20 odd seconds to do there. Again, I'm just going to move down slightly, so it's up quite a bit. So it's funny, the other leg wasn't really sensitive at all in this area. In fact, I even mentioned, I know, like when I did it here on the contract and relax, it didn't feel too bad. When I go over it in a pressure wave, though, I don't really actually feel that there. So that's, you know, quite interesting. Sometimes it doesn't, until you start moving, you don't notice how things are sensitive, you know. So what we're going to do now then is just finish it up. 30 seconds flossing, okay? So I'm going to start off about mid quad, get a bit lower, and then you can come back to there again. You can point those toes or keep them bent. Obviously that takes a little bit of range of motion out there. If you point your toe, you can bring it down a little bit further. Just another 15 seconds then. Try and breathe throughout, try not to hold your breath. 3, 2, 1.